Thank you all for joining. Super excited to be talking with you all today. I'm going to go ahead and take you through a presentation specifically surrounding ransomware and different real-life detection opportunities that we can leverage in our own environments to uncover ransomware. I'll be using a real-world example of something that we over here at Red Canary discovered in one of our customers' environments. And then we'll go ahead and talk about some tips and tricks that we can leverage not only to detect ransomware, but hopefully prevent it from entering our environment in the first place. So please drop any questions you have in the chat, and we'll go ahead and get to those at the end. So my name is Cara Seeley. I am a customer solutions engineer here at Red Canary. I am based out of Boston, Massachusetts. And a fun fact about me is that I am a NASAM certified personal trainer. So what do I do as a customer solutions engineer here at Red Canary? I work with all of our future customers and help them learn a little bit more about what it is that we do, answer all of their questions, and sometimes we go ahead and actually deploy Red Canary in their environment to get a hands-on feel for what it is that we do. So our table of contents today, we're going to level set first by talking about what MITRE attack is for those of you who may not have heard of it before. We are aligned heavily to it over here, and it's really our common language. So we'll go ahead and level set on all of that before we then move into how Red Canary is leveraging MITRE attack in our own detections. And then we'll go ahead into that real world ransomware outbreak that I was speaking to earlier and give you all an idea of, what ransomware really looks like when it's beginning to infiltrate the environment and how we can detect it earlier on than when it's, say, encrypting files or exfiltrating information. We want to make sure we're catching it sooner. And then we'll go through those practical tips and tricks to make sure that we're helping protect you from these threats as well. So let's go ahead and first level set on what MITRE attack is. If you've not heard of MITRE attack before, it's a globally accessible knowledge base of different adversary tactics and techniques, and it's based on real-world observations. So simply put, it's a collection of tools, techniques, and processes that are leveraged by adversaries to perform malicious activities. It's informed by threat intel and real-world data. And so why is MITRE attack important, not only to Red Canary, but just, folks in general? The first component is documentation. Actually documenting those tactics, techniques, and procedures used by the adversaries is vital for us to understand how we can better protect ourselves from it. It also helps us to understand the goals of the adversaries. So tactics represent the why or the goal that adversary is trying to achieve in that part of the attack. So for example, persistence tactic represents techniques and sub-techniques that would be leveraged to keep access to systems across restarts and change credentials and other interruptions. It also helps us understand how adversaries are achieving their goals. So techniques represent the actual actions that are being used for the adversaries to accomplish that part of their mission. So using that persistence one again, an example of a persistence technique could include any access, or action or configuration change that lets the adversary maintain their foothold on a system. And these could be things like replacing or hijacking legitimate code or even adding startup code. And then lastly, it helps us understand specific implementations that adversaries use for a technique. So procedures are the behaviors performed and executed by the attacker in each step of that attack. So an example of that could be, malicious code being injected into a PDF file or a link to a cloud-based drive to drop a threat onto an endpoint. And here's just another example to bring that to life a bit more. This is an example of a tactic defined as lateral movement, and then the following attacks that could be possible once lateral movement is achieved. So lateral movement consists of techniques that an adversary would leverage to either control remote systems on a network, and reaching their objective would often involve pivoting through multiple systems and accounts in order to gain elevated permissions. So they might do things like install remote access tools to accomplish that, or even leverage legitimate credentials with native networking and operating system tools, which might in fact be stealthier. So now that we've level set on MITRE ATT&CK, we'll go ahead and transition into how Red Canary specifically leverages it. So MITRE ATT&CK by the numbers, there are at the time 156 techniques, 272 sub-techniques, and 59 data sources in the MITRE ATT&CK matrix. So it's very overwhelming. And with that immense amount of techniques and different ways to detect those techniques, it can be a very daunting task to take on to create detection opportunities for each and every single one. Some of those might require deeper detection coverage than others. Some aren't feasible for detection at all. So really what I'm saying is that you probably don't want to just develop the ability to detect each and every technique in the matrix and call it a day. Something like credential dumping, for example, might deserve 50 different methods of detection, or something like domain trust discovery might only need one method. And so how do we actually leverage this? The first thing is that a common language is essential for us when we're communicating with the different security teams that we partner with. When we are leveraging behavioral analytics to hunt for adversary behavior or confirm threatening activity in your environment, it's important to us that you quickly understand what it is that we're communicating. So we found that the MITRE ATT&CK taxonomy of behavioral techniques best fit our philosophy. So we exclusively use ATT&CK at Red Canary here. A couple of things that we do here: every single detection analytic that we leverage is mapped to one or more attack techniques that analytic identifies. We also produce a coverage heat map, which allows our customers to understand the total coverage that we have that we contribute to your security program. And then any sort of potentially threatening activity or confirmed threats published following that investigation will show the set of attack techniques compiled from the underlying events, so that you have an idea of what it is that the adversary was leveraging in that attack. And then here, just a little bit about our detection methodology at Red Canary. Red Canary's threat detection engine is comprised of thousands of detectors at any given time, and it's continuously updated and refined as we learn more about the latest threats that are impacting our customers. And Red Canary's detectors are not just looking for threats. Our detectors are really aimed at identifying interesting events. And we want that to generate events for our analysts to review and have them ultimately make the determination of whether or not that event is malicious. So we would rather investigate more benign events than potentially miss something by being too specific. And our detectors cover a wide array of behaviors and can generate a lot of events for our team to investigate. And we track that conversion from true positive events to true positive malicious or suspicious detections. And this enables efficient tuning and helps us identify areas where a behavior is accurate at highlighting a specific action, but might not actually produce threats. So now let's go ahead and take a look at a real world example here. In this example, we're going to go ahead and look at a scenario where a healthcare customer of ours was probably just mere moments away from a full-blown ransomware outbreak. We'll walk through 10 different detection opportunities that we leverage to uncover that behavior and stop it in its tracks. And just for a little bit of background on how this threat was initially able to gain access into the environment, it was through a spear phishing email that contained a PDF attachment. And once one of their end users opened that PDF, it reached out to a Google Drive and downloaded an executable file that's known as Bazaar. And so we're going to go ahead and run through each of these 10 detection opportunities. They were identified within a roughly 50-minute time frame. And like I said, it's likely that this customer was very close to a full-blown ransomware attack. We here at Red Canary have been tracking ransomware for many years, and we have many analytics in our threat detection engine that are aimed at uncovering these ransomware tactics and techniques and procedures. So we'll go ahead and walk through these. Feel free to jot down notes. These are practical examples that you can leverage to go ahead and detect these specific behaviors. but we also do have a more detailed blog post that we can share out as well if you'd like to take your time reading through each of those. But we'll go through each of these detection opportunities at a high level now. So our first detection opportunity is categorized within privilege escalation, which is when an adversary tries to obtain higher level permissions on a system or network. Here specifically, the adversary is leveraging a technique called process injection, which is a way to disguise themselves as a legitimate process. And this type of behavior can be particularly difficult to detect because the attacker is hiding within trusted tools such as command.exe in this case. And we were able to detect this behavior by looking for instances of command prompt making network connections and executing without any command line parameters. Now, Red Canary understands this type of adversary behavior, and we've built associated detectors to identify the manifestation of bizarre. So if you wanted to refine this even further, you could look for the hollow command.exe spawning a child process. Typical child processes associated with bizarre would include svc host, explorer, net.exe, and nltest.exe. And those lead us into our second detection opportunity here. So from there, we observed several reconnaissance commands. Specifically, we observed the adversary leveraging nltest.exe to make domain trust determinations. nltest usually cannot be disabled, but we were able to identify this behavior by looking for instances of it executing with a command line that included certain parameters. Those are included in the blog post as well. And we found this to be a very high fidelity analytic for us when it comes to catching ransomware families. So continuing on in this discovery category, our detection opportunity 3 of 10, we saw the adversary here attempting to enumerate Windows domain admin accounts. This is a behavior that we commonly associate with ransomware as well. So here we find it useful to look for commands containing net group domain admins. Next, we saw the adversary leveraging additional trusted tools in an attempt to continue flying under the radar. We observed explorer.exe spawning svc host, which is not a normal execution pattern. We don't typically see svc host as a child of explorer. Typically, the only process that should be spawning svc host is services.exe. So you could look for situations where svc host is the child process of anything other than services.exe to identify that anomalous behavior. Another way that we detected this activity was looking for svc host executing without a command line. When we see svc host executing without a command line, that typically indicates that svc host may have been spawned to host injected code, which is exactly what we saw in this detection opportunity. Halfway through with our detection opportunities now, in this part of the attack, Cobalt Strike was dropped onto the endpoint and was executed by run DLL32. This allowed for the intrusion to spread laterally, leveraging WMI, which then eventually spawned PowerShell to run an encoded command. And that encoded PowerShell command here created another Cobalt Strike beacon. So the detection opportunity that we leveraged was looking for encoded PowerShell commands. It's a great way to catch this specific evil as well as other types. But if that's too noisy for you and you do run a lot of encoded PowerShell commands, you could also look for instances when PowerShell is a child process of command.exe. Next, in detection opportunity 6, we saw successful lateral movement with Cobalt Strike's PSExec module. So with this, run DLL32 spawned with no command line arguments, and it performed multiple network connections over SMB to other systems. So a detection opportunity here would be seeing run DLL32 spawning without arguments. It's very suspicious, so we recommend not only looking out for that behavior, but also looking for instances of it making network connections. Another way related to this that you could search for this type of activity would be looking within the Windows system event logs, and that would be for the ID 7045. Event ID 7045 records the creation of new Windows services. In detection opportunity 7 out of 10, here we observed the attacker enumerating enterprise administrator accounts. This discovery technique can be used to gain information about the environment and can help adversaries determine which accounts exist in order to aid in their follow-on behavior. So here we recommend looking for the commands that actually list out these accounts, such as net group enterprise admin /domain. Again, these are all listed in our follow-up article, which you guys will have access to. Detection opportunity 8 comprised of many different indications of activity, from multiple DLLs being loaded and associated credential operations to Reg Server 32 making external comms. Adversaries in many cases may leverage credential material stored in process memory of LSAS, which can be harvested by administrator or system accounts. And using LSAS credential dumps may allow for, again, potential lateral movement within a device or over a network medium. And some of the signals and behaviors in this detector pointed us to Mimikatz, which is considered the 6th most prevalent threat across industries from our research. And then the next signal we saw was code being injected into Reg Server 32 via Bloodhound. This tool performs a massive amount of reconnaissance on networks that are hosting Windows systems in order to find the privileged accounts to target. So this tool tends to be very noisy and larger networks, and it's easy to spot when it's looking for many SMB connections over port 445. So when working with smaller networks, it's best to tune your detections to what would be considered a normal volume of traffic. Our detectors specifically set a threshold to look for behaviors above the normal day-to-day established connections. And then finally, in the last minutes of this threat executing its tasks within the network, we came to another discovery tactic. And this time, the technique was to target the AD infrastructure. So the adversary may have been looking to gain a larger foothold by identifying other accounts with elevated privileges. This could be for both internal and external needs, like exfiltration of usernames and passwords, or further lateral movement in the network. Specifically here, they were leveraging AD-Find, which is an open source tool that extracts information from AD. So to detect this, you could look for instances of AD-Find in your environment, or perhaps even disallow it completely. And if that's not possible, we have multiple commands in that article that you can look for as well. And that wraps it up. I know that's a lot, and in under an hour, we were able to see all of this activity and detect it. We were fortunate that the initial access was detected within minutes, as this customer's preventative controls were ineffective and the adversary here was moving quickly. In this case, we immediately notified the customer and we began rapidly responding to ensure that the adversary was stopped in their tracks. And thankfully, there was no ransomware outbreak at the hospital that day. So those are the 10 detection opportunities that we specifically leverage to uncover that activity. Next, we'll go ahead and just talk through a couple of proactive and reactive controls that can block or limit the effects of ransomware in the unfortunate event that you do begin to find those beginning signs. So first, be on the ready. Make sure that in addition to maintaining updates on your operating system, software, and firmware to actually get a real-world feel for these incidents, we recommend simulating a ransomware attack in your environment. You would identify each team and person's responsibilities and measure how you perform. You can also leverage third-party assessment services to evaluate the efficacy of your security controls and processes. If you do start to find these beginning signs, we want you to act quickly. These could be things like isolating the endpoints to stop a lot of that lateral movement that we began to see attempts of in that threat. And also, beginning to immediately take care of indicators of compromise by, banning and deleting files, stopping network connections in their tracks as well. And coordinate closely with your security broker should any additional steps be needed following that detection. And then just be really, really familiar with what your recovery plan is. Have your backups ready, but also test your ability to recover from those backups. Ensure they're not corrupted and that they'll be viable for you. And then always have a paper version of your response plan as well in the event that you need to go offline. And then just a little bit about us over here at Red Canary and how we help our customers. Our customer experience, we only want our customers to hear from us in the event that there is a confirmed threat. We do not publish false positives to our customers. We want you to know that when you're hearing from us, it's because you need to. So in one dashboard, we publish our confirmed threats, our detection and response activity, as well as reporting. And we do aim to be your security ally. We are, of course, here to help you identify and respond to threats, but we also want your security program to get better over time. So we aim to work hand in hand with you to get you to a better posture. As you have seen in our presentation today, we have deep threat detection capabilities and we perform thorough investigations. So when our customers hear from us, they have a detailed report of what exactly took place and they have actionable insights into next steps that should be taken place. And then responding to that threat, we work with our customers to create automated, customized playbooks to do things such as automatically take devices off the network or automatically ban those IOCs that we were talking about. And you also work with an incident handler team. So our incident handlers are security experts. They know you and your business, and they help you respond to threats, as well as provide that proactive security guidance to make sure that you're getting to a better place over time. And lastly, we deliver tangible results to our customers, specifically with MITRE ATT&CK. This includes 203 of the MITRE ATT&CK techniques that we cover with our behavioral detections. We also deliver a 10 times reduction in mean time to respond and a 75% reduction in realized risk per endpoint over time as we continue to work with you. And that is everything that I had for you all today. This last slide is just resources for the curious. That first article there is the official blog post about the attack that we ran through today. A little bit more detail into our detection methodology, which we talked a bit about today. And then just a little bit more about MITRE ATT&CK, our tools that we have for testing your environment, as well as Katie Nichols' blog, who is our Director of Threat Intel over here at Red Canary. Well, thank you all so much. Let me go ahead and look at the chat now and see if there are any questions. And please feel free to go ahead and add those in there. We'll hang out for a couple minutes to make sure everybody gets their questions answered. No questions so far. I'll hang out for another minute or two. If you guys don't have any questions, thank you again for joining. I hope that you learned something new today and got a deeper idea into what ransomware is and the things that it tries to do when it's first coming into your environment, and just some, hopefully helpful ideas on how you can put those into practice too. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Please swing by the booth if you have any more questions for us. Have a great day.